Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm Max Tarrant.
I'm William Chen.
And I'm Sarah Watt.
And each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective with some connection. It could be the same director, the same actor, or a similar theme. This month we are discussing Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which came out this year, and Fargo, which came out in 1996. The connection being that they both star Frances McDormand. Right, William, would you like to give us a bit of an intro into Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri?
Of course, which is a fantastic title, by the way. Three Billboards is directed by playwright and pretty great director, Martin McDonagh. It stars Frances McDormand, Woody Harrelson, Sam Rockwell, Peter Dinklage, and a bunch of other great actors. And it is about the plight of a mother, played by Frances McDormand, named Mildred, who goes to extreme lengths to force the town to reconcile with the fact that a crime had been committed and nothing had come of the investigation.
Excellent. And Sarah, would you like to give us a bit of an overview of 1996 Fargo?
Fargo, a most wonderful Oscar-winning film, not that that means everything, but it kind of counts. Written and directed by the brothers Coen, Joel and Ethan. Frances McDormand stars, but as does William H. Macy, who actually has the lion's share of the scenes in the film. It is about an ordinary guy called Jerry Lundegaard who is in some plight, to use the word that you used, William, and who goes to extraordinary lengths, to use the same words that you used, William, to get himself out of financial trouble by having his wife kidnapped in the hope that his father-in-law will pay the ransom and that Jerry himself can avail himself of those finances. However, a comedy of errors ensues, things get bloody and go terribly wrong.
And you say William H. Macy, just to kind of jump straight into Fargo, I find that there's three leads in this piece, because there is William H. Macy, Frances McDormand, but Steve Buscemi has a good third of the screen time. And even though Steve Buscemi had roles up until that point, I feel like this is the film that puts him front and centre in terms of a leading man status. It's still very much an ensemble piece, but he really just gets to shine. And if I understand correctly, the part was written for him.
It's funny, I have the screenplay at home and I had a quick read of some of the lines just to see if very much of it was improv or not. And you can imagine that if it's an Ethan Coen, I believe it's Joel who directs and Ethan who writes, isn't it? And if it's an Ethan Coen script, then you don't really need to be improvising. And I read the lines and I thought these sound as though they're written for Steve Buscemi. And so, yes, that makes absolute sense to me.
When was Reservoir Dogs? 1992.
And Barton Fink was prior to that. Oh, was Barton Fink prior to
Yes.
that? Another Coen Brothers film. So Steve Buscemi had been up and coming, absolutely. And Reservoir Dogs, notorious
Because
Mr.
I think he
Pink.
plays kind of similar character.
I do too, and he delivers his lines in the same way.
Well, I think there's a lot about the film that has that. It borrows a little bit in terms of just bringing in the banal. But it deals with it in a very different way to the way Tarantino does. And in some ways it makes a more subtle balancing act between the banal, the everyday, and the gruesome, and the whatever else it is, the serious. And I think I'll talk more about that later because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think you're right about the banality. So, I mean, let's go with where we're heading. I thought about that watching Fargo and watching Steve Buscemi deliver his lines when he's in the car with his. So Steve Buscemi basically is one of the hired hands, the kidnappers who then botches the job terribly. And he's in the car with the very taciturn, virtually silent Peter
Stormare?
Peter Stormare.
Stormare.
Or Stormare, or whatever. That's right. And he's like, you haven't said anything
He
for
looks
4 hours.
He looks like Ryan Gosling's dad, I reckon.
He does look like a Ryan Gosling dad.
Mixed with a little bit of Bruce Willis.
That's a casting opportunity waiting to happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that Steve Buscemi is the verbose character who's all like, why aren't you saying anything? You haven't said a word in 4 hours. Would it kill you to say something? And it's very similar to the Mr. Pink kind of delivery and the neuroticism and all that sort of thing. So yeah.
Alright, so maybe it was like we said, it's a sort of a series of films, and definitely Reservoir Dogs is the other film that I think of when I think of Steve Buscemi. But there's something about this character where, I guess up front and centre is is where I was sort of heading, because it does feel like there is three leads in this film.
Yeah.
There are
Yes.
definitely
Totally.
three story threads going through the
Yeah.
whole
Yep.
whole piece.
So the interesting thing is, we've picked Frances McDormand as our common denominator here. There are other common denominators, dear listeners, which we will apprise you of shortly, but obviously she's the notable one. And yet, in Fargo, it's William H. Macy's film for the first 33 minutes. We don't meet... good Lord, and I've just
Marge.
forgotten her name. Marge Gunderson,
Gunderson.
so who married Norm's son of a Gunderson. We don't meet the wonderful policewoman Marge Gunderson until 33 minutes in, and she doesn't meet Jerry Lundegaard until an hour into the film. So it's interesting that she won Best Actress for Fargo, and she does seem like a star of the film, doesn't she? And of course she is a star of the film, but it's interesting that actually it's William H. Macy's, he's the protagonist.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like she is the protagonist, and that it's just a very ballsy on the Coen brothers' part to tell a story and not introduce their protagonist until she's part of the story. Like,
Right.
I think another writer might have
Yeah.
felt like they needed to introduce the Marge character earlier, but it would have felt like, why is she in this film now?
Nice. Good
She doesn't
point.
come into the story until she needs to, and she is the person that we're left with. I mean,
That's true.
the William H. Macy storyline conclusion is very much like an afterthought, the way that they include that scene at the end. She is who we are left with, her and her husband.
Very
And
good point. So it's almost like a relay. That, almost like it's his film and then he passes the baton and she takes it on. And you're right, it ends with her. So, yeah.
But what about the comparison between her in Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri? She's confronting the sheriff of the town, and then now in Fargo, she's part of the police force.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Kind of an interesting comparison.
Yes, it is.
Opposite ends of the spectrum in some ways.
So the
But
antithesis.
she's very extremely effective in her role compared to in Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. We're not so sure about that.
In both cases, the characters are. They're in stark contrast with each other. But on the other hand, they are of the same piece. And
Yes.
Yeah.
Both Margie and Mildred are these forces of nature. Marge in a much more subtle way compared to Mildred, but in a way they kind of they make the world revolve around them.
And they're both seeking justice.
Yes.
So
That's
even though one is
definitely
on
true.
the other side of the law,
Yeah.
they're both absolutely seeking justice and trying to solve a crime.
And I
Period.
think your point about the way they make the world revolve around them is good in terms of going back to who's the main character and how she stands up as the main character. Is just because of the way it's her tone and her style that she just demands things come to her, and she's so confident and so almost blasé. She's got this beautiful.
Do you mean
local,
the character or you
Yeah.
mean the actress? The character.
The character. As this character Marge, she's wonderfully chirpy. And just goes about her extremely serious police business.
I love that. I love the lack of cynicism in her character. She is chirpy. She's positive. She's a family woman. She's a part of her community, but she's not stupid. She knows what's going on, and she doesn't let the horrors of her job affect her life view.
Or her
And-
7-month pregnancy.
Yeah,
and manners go a long way
Oh,
for her,
yes.
I think. So, and it's amazing, the key moment in a lot of ways, and the turning point of this film is when William H. Macy breaks the veneer of politeness with her and kind of says, he
snaps, doesn't he? Yeah.
He snaps a little bit, and she just is not okay with it. And
Yeah.
suddenly
You have
we're-
no cause to be snippy with me. I'm just doing my job. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. It's beautiful.
I love one of my favourite scenes in cinema is when she goes and meets her old school friend. What's his name? Mike.
Chan or
No, it's like
like Yamamoto or something.
yeah,
Yes.
I can't remember, but
Yes.
and just that wonderful scene where he awkwardly sits next to her.
Yes.
and then
She's like, no, I'd like it if you sit over there.
yeah, and she's like, no, it's just so I can see you better, so
Without
I
turning
don't
my
wanna
neck. Yes, that's
again,
right.
completely unflappable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just the wonderful-
and resolute. Yeah.
And then of course him bursting into tears and I'm so lonely. But I just love how that scene is used to both develop her character, but it also is just a lovely plot point, which is maybe that guy was lying as well. Like when she finds out that this
Right.
old friend of
Yeah.
hers didn't marry this woman.
Yeah.
He's fully lying to her to take advantage of her. Well, maybe there's someone else who might have done that. It's just a really great... Everything in this film is so tight.
Yeah.
And that is just wonderfully woven into the story.
Yeah.
And the first time you watch it, you kind of don't realise that that's actually integral to solve the case. Yeah.
I didn't either.
No, neither.
Yeah.
It's always felt to me like a strange sort of little, not even a subplot, just like a little diversion.
Yeah.
That kind of gives her character, that builds into her character and her curiosity about this guy who she hasn't seen. But we know that she's not looking for like an extramarital affair or anything, strike it up with an ex or anything, because she's 7 months pregnant and terribly happy with the lovely Norm. But it has always felt to me since '96 like a curious piece of character work.
I think that's why I love it so much, because it is so clearly about her. But then when you realise that it is also, feeding into the greater mystery or the greater investigation, it's even more satisfying.
I love the difference between the two Frances McDormand characters in terms of how they pursue justice. And you've already said, Max, that she has in Fargo, she has such a polite and effective way about her. And I think it's adorable that she is always one step ahead of her male colleagues, but also Lou, her cop colleague, stands holding the two hot chocolates or coffees or whatever. She's the one trekking into the field of snow, bending down at 7 months pregnant to look at clues and saying, oh, looks like this one's a bit of a blah, blah, blah. And, and just completely owning that. And by comparison, the Three Billboards character, obviously, is extremely violent in her language, at least, or in her emotion.
And her actions.
And I prefer me my Marge character as a person, but I do think it's interesting, and obviously, run with this, but it's interesting. Did she get nominated for an Oscar?
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes. And she's
Three
front
Billboards.
runner.
For Three Billboards,
Yeah.
I mean. Yeah, that's right. So, interesting.
I mean, the acting was phenomenal in Three Billboards. I was not as endeared to the film as I don't know how you all feel about the film, but I'm not as endeared to the film as the amount of people that are. I felt that for me, like, I was enjoying the film and I was laughing, and but they're pretty despicable humans in terms of the way that they talk about some of the other people in the town, particularly the racial slurs that they used, which I can talk more about on that, but I'll skip over that for now. But for me, like, the story takes a turn where it starts to become a little convenient. I can't really talk too much to that because it is a spoiler, but there is a moment in the film where a character is in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it sort of is a catalyst for the third act of the movie. And I just thought, this is all a bit convenient. And then it's then added to with another moment where a character is in the right place at the right time, and I just thought, I'm not on board with where this film is taking me. I love the ending, the final moments, but that whole third act for me, I was not
Went
a
a bit
fan of
wrong.
it.
I think that's just how, like, Martin McDonagh writes. Because if you watch In Bruges and you watch Seven Psychopaths, it's just everything is so neat and tidy and everything slots into place. And you either roll with it and kind of accept this version of reality, which is a little bit skewed, a little bit grotesque, or you really find problems with it. And I think for me, it didn't rub me the wrong way too much. It definitely did in Seven Psychopaths. I hate that movie.
I hate that movie. I wrote a blog post entitled 7 Reasons I Hate Seven Psychopaths.
Oh, man.
And I linked to it in my Three Billboards review, actually, which I've never done on stuff. Because I was like, gotta be honest with you, hated McDonagh's this film, and this is why. I'm so with you on that. Because everybody loves it.
Because it is, I've never seen a movie, sorry, this is kind of moving in another direction, but it is so up itself.
Yes.
Ooh, isn't this clever?
Yes. And so objectionable and so derivative and just so crass without being clever crass, like in Bruges.
But that's how I felt, because I enjoyed In Bruges. I was relatively indifferent to Seven Psychopaths. I really felt that there's the scene where Sam Rockwell's character, where Frances McDormand's character, says, how's the N-word torturing going? And he says, we can't call them the N-word anymore. It's people of color. So you need to say, how's the people of color torturing going? And I was like, here are these two white characters discussing the use of the N-word, limited black characters in the film. I was just like, why am I spending an hour or 2 hours with these people? For me, that was really like, oh,
But
this
isn't
is really...
that Irish McDonough? Well, actually, he's sort of Irish-British English, isn't he? But Irish-English McDonough's being outside of America, therefore can comment on, and it's a shorthand to presenting these characters as despicable.
Yeah, I understand that. I just thought, really? Like, I didn't see why this was needing to be talked about when... My only thing was that in a time where we do have... I don't want to talk too much about Trump, because I hate talking about Trump, because I feel like the more you talk about him, the more
powerful he becomes.
But in
It's
terms
like
of that...
Candyman or something.
Yeah,
Don't
but in
say
terms
his
of
name
his
for
administration
it.
being voted into power by people who are just clearly disenfranchised, needing a voice, he became this voice, he then got into power. Was the film commenting on a section of society that had feel like they were voiceless for a time, and that's that's why the American politics are in the state it is now. But I still couldn't really give the film that. I just felt like these characters were racist and derogatory towards minorities. I mean, I still don't accept the way they treated the Peter Dinklage character. I feel like that was really off. And like you said, the Psychopaths, it was trying to highlight something, but it wasn't clever enough.
I don't think
he
was trying to highlight anything in a here's a message in a moral way. I still think, as much as I enjoyed Three Billboards, I still think he's a little bit in it for shock value. And therefore, I mean, we can't talk about it without spoilering, but the big thing that the horrible cop character in Three Billboards does is outrageously, despicably, horrifically awful. And so there's a lot of shock, and you're either laughing because you can't believe it, or you're not laughing because you think it's terrible.
And yet the really strange thing is the film still portrays him as a complex character with shades of grey.
And you have sympathy for him, maybe, towards the end.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess it's probably weird for me. I just wasn't on board.
It's fun. Oh, sorry, Max.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is. I think it's challenging, right? Because at the start you go into this and it's really well done as a drama, and you're like, oh, I can really get into this. This is fantastic the way they're developing these characters. And then when it doesn't quite have that gravitas through the middle and through the end as it gets more complicated and then it gets tied up too easily, I think I was a little bit on board. But it's kind of the difference between a really good film and a great film, right? To make a cliche. I feel like this film was really good. It's really good, but it's not like
a great film.
It doesn't grab that greatness because it never actually. It went off from that quite early on.
Yeah, I think
it's trying to do too much with the plot.
Right, I agree.
It could have been if it was simpler and really just wanted to delve into these characters, then it could have been great. But but not as popular. So
it was really ugly as well. Oh my gosh.
Ugly?
What a ugly film, Three Billboards.
In terms of behaviour?
No, in terms of just how it looks.
Oh, yes.
There's a scene with the deer. I could not believe what I was seeing. Yeah, it's not well shot. Or at least
that scene with the deer was superimposed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was so clearly... Yeah.
But just kind of piggybacking off what you guys were saying, Jeremy and Sarah, there's actually a huge backlash against Seven Psychopaths for exactly that reason. Like, the racial politics are really muddled.
Of Seven Psychopaths?
Of Three Billboards.
Three Billboards, yes, there is.
I think rightly so.
Yeah.
I think rightly so.
There's a lot of commenters on Twitter and reviewers and other people who are just not with it.
And do you think that the filmmakers kind of thought that they wrapped that one up by doing what they did, without spoiling for people that have seen it?
You mean plot-wise?
Plot-wise by
dealing with
introducing that other character. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, they introduced... I want to say, it's not really a huge spoiler. They introduced a black character.
Yeah, in a position of power.
In a position of power.
Yeah.
I think that... initially when I saw that actor, because he's... I forget his name now, but he's off The Wire and he's off Tremaine. He's a fantastic actor. And I've loved his two characters in those two TV series. I was like, oh! And then it's just...
He's just
perfunctory.
Yeah.
Do you know what's awful? In this scene, I don't think this counts as a spoiler. If you do, you can cut it later. I don't think this counts as a spoiler, but in Three Billboards, when the black character comes in, he says who he is and he doesn't show any ID. And I spent a good 15 minutes, 20 minutes thinking, he's not who he said he was.
Right.
And then it turned out that was completely erroneous and he totally was and it wasn't a thing. And
I think that thing as introduction though, when he's first introduced, there's a first shot of him watching the action that's taking place.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure there's a badge there.
Oh yeah, he flashes his badge.
You see
Sure,
a badge.
but
He doesn't flash the badge to
them.
No.
And so this is irrelevant. You can probably just cut that bit out. But I did think, this is someone who's gonna. But no. Anyway, I say cut that bit out.
Yeah. I also found the again, this is just I played the real issues with this movie. For me, the politics with Woody Harrelson's character's wife was really problematic for me as well. Like the fact that she's 20 years his junior.
The biggest problem for me is that she's Abby Cornish, and I hate Abby Cornish. But okay, put that to one side.
Okay,
For the time being, I thought she was Brie Larson. It's like, man, she's young.
I just thought, sure, in terms of in terms of real life relationships, totally believable. But in terms of cinema politics, of having however old Woody Harrelson is and 20 years as junior his wife, I was just like, come on, guys. And then what she has to do in the film and the dialogue she has to say, she's really only there as this pretty wife plot device to have sex with him, and I was just I wasn't on board with either. I just thought,
I feel like this film we didn't kind of start off by saying the good things. The best things about this film are the character dynamism, the characters, particularly the main characters, probably the three main characters of Rockwell, Harrelson and McDormand are all very dynamic, interesting, got multiple shades.
Yeah, well-rounded.
And the dialogue is that must be one of the best things, right? The dialogue is piping hot.
Yes.
Witty. Particularly McDormand. Very snappy, very quick, and very acerbic, probably.
She's so easy to watch. Well, they're all easy to watch. They're such fantastic performers. I think the fact that they're getting kudos for it, particularly Sam Rockwell and Frances McDormand. Like Sam Rockwell, he's just been such a powerhouse of an actor for so long, but he's so often in the background or to the side,
And to be fair, and I totally hear you, Jeremy, and I agree with you that the Abby Cornish character is a cipher, but what I thought was interesting about Three Billboards is the Rockwell character, the Harrelson character, and the McDormand character are all potentially extremely unlikable, and they are also, even if it's by the end of it, really lovely or sympathetic or lovable.
As well, yeah.
And I think it does take something to write, not write caricatures, and to write those sorts of well-rounded characters. And particularly if you're going to make Rockwell so deplorable, to then make him somebody whom by the end we're maybe okay with, I think shows something. And I think, to go back to Fargo, I think the Coens are wonderful at doing that. I think, and interestingly, Marge in Fargo is pretty much a one-sided lovely character. There isn't anything about her that we don't like or approve of. But
Fargo is much more black and white, isn't it? You have the good guys and the bad guys, and the bad guys are just there's very little redeeming about them.
Yeah, they're either evil or stupid or both.
Yeah, or greedy or cowardly.
H. Macy.
Yeah,
I think you could take different perspectives on him.
I found him despicable throughout the entire thing.
He's hilarious.
Yeah,
I mean, it's difficult because they don't tell you the issue that he's dealing with at the beginning.
You know it's money.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And as I was watching him last night, and it's like, it's a lot of money. Like, he needs $1 million to pay off his debts.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck is going on?
There's some things about that are like, they can't do this. It wouldn't work. But he should technically be in a lot more stress as the film begins because he's already got this debt. And yet you can't do that because they need to start him on kind of low stress and build it up as the film goes on.
But also, he's already had the idea right at the very beginning of the film. Do you remember that he goes and he meets with Steve Buscemi literally in scene one, I think. And and there's that lovely sort of not very slow reveal of, so who are you and what are you here for and what do I need you to do? So immediately our plot is laid out for us on that diner table in the opening scene. So I guess because he's already come to his conclusion of, I'm going to get my wife kidnapped, I'll get not the dowry, what's it called?
Ransom.
The ransom, and then it'll all be okay. So his stress levels are lower. But you're right, they can't be that high because then things have to escalate.
Yeah. I mean, he should be in unless it doesn't make sense otherwise. For me, this character, why he'd do this thing that is extremely radical without being under a huge amount of pressure. He doesn't come off as extremely reckless. He's a really beautiful, subtle character who's been now since, you've played that character a million times, who is slightly foolhardy and a little bit of a pushover, but he's really nicely balanced. I mean, he's probably played it himself a few more times.
Yes. He will have been cast in a lot. It didn't quite make sense
unless, I don't know, there was one little gap in the film. Can I ask, Jeremy, most of your critiques of Three Billboards so far have been kind of political. What about the storyline, etc. overall?
But that's the other one I said earlier, which was I felt the film jumped the shark for me when...
Oh, that's right, you did say
yeah,
that.
so for me, story-wise.
What about the voiceovers? How do people feel about those?
I don't even know. But there were voiceovers in Three Billboards.
Yeah. Totally.
Were there?
There's lots of them.
Who?
From Woody Harrelson.
Just Woody Harrelson.
Right. Those voiceovers.
It made it feel like I didn't particularly appreciate that. It just always feels like bloody Shawshank Redemption, doesn't it?
But also, it's a really cheap way of
I know, it's just so cheap.
Conveying stuff. And the fact that I don't even remember the voiceovers probably conveys they weren't that necessary.
I think for me, the third time the voiceovers were used, when Sam Rockwell was involved, it almost felt like it was edited for comedy. Like they thought, this is a really trite, thing to do.
That's for me. That's the scene where the film
falls apart.
And this is a classic example of them kind of taking a kind of easy way to tidy things up that just kind of decreases the overall weight of the film, I think, somehow.
The film that just threw itself into my mind was No Country for Old Men, because I'm remembering in Three Billboards that there's a lot of quite serious violence, and there's fire, and there's reckless behaviour that could and does result in human endangerment and things. And I thought, God, it's so funny, isn't it, when the Academy goes, oh, we love a film that's a little bit like that. And when did that last happen? And this isn't necessarily when it last happened, but it did happen with No Country for Old Men, which interestingly, of course, is a Coen Brothers film, and had at least three, didn't it, strong, all male, but nonetheless, protagonists, and a similar sort of quest narrative where things went quite ghastly in places. And it always, I think I'm always a little bemused when the Academy... if they're not giving people Oscars for playing people with disabilities, then
or the Queen,
then they like to be a little bit risque, Oh, we'll do it for the film that's ridden with swear words. And
I think I've figured out what this film needs. It needs Coen Brothers behind the camera, because it is kind of a Coen Brothers-esque storyline in some ways. And I think this is a good place to say why. I mean, I think we all absolutely loved Fargo.
Absolutely,
And I think the main thing that they absolutely nail is just the balance between serious and lightheartedness, between darkness and humour. And this film kind of plays out on kind of almost on different registers. For example, watching the kidnapping of this woman is done in this fantastic
in Fargo?
kind of... Yes,
obviously, yes, yeah.
Is kind of done on these two different wavelengths in some ways. Like, there's the real dramatic aspect that you can watch it from her perspective. It's extremely serious. She's doing these things. She's banging her head. It's petrifying. And yet there's times where you can almost get behind these two nasty, despicable men who are... And I think they take more of the filmic, cinematic perspective. It's the classic film, which is a bit more humorous. Hey, she's getting kidnapped, it's not a big deal, it happens all the time in movies. And they laugh when she is doing something, for example, has a big hood over her head and is running through the snow and falls over. And they're like, ha ha ha! And that's what the kind of classic cinema would do that, you know? And yet, I love how that plays out in two different kind of ways. I've got more examples, but...
Yeah, for sure. The slapstick elements of Fargo, I think, really make those scenes work as well. Since you are laughing, but it's dark. It's a pretty dark comedy.
The only one I felt just went a bit too far, but it was really when it went classic Coen Brothers, was the last part where it gets to absurdity of pushing the foot of this man into a
wood chipper.
That's I was like, wow, they've really ranked it right
but
up.
it's the most iconic scene in the
Yeah.
whole thing, isn't it? And I love the detail in that shot.
With the little sock.
With the horrible sort of athletic white sock that you just think, you can imagine Steve Buscemi's character wearing those socks when he's in bed with these prostitutes. He's that kind of low grade of a character. And the fact that that's Peter Stormare, however you say his name, has to get like a block of wood to try and force this foot down.
I mean, I guess it's well done, right? Because it's built up so slowly throughout the film. They've got more and more intense, and then it's just like.
And then when you actually get to the moment, you hear the sound, and you are from Marge's point of view. You don't know what's going on, but it's something horrible.
That's right.
And then you gradually see the reveal. It's kind of hidden by trees, and there it is.
Yeah.
And then that wonderful shot where, because he can't initially hear her over the sound of the wood chipper, and he sort of looks at her, and that's when you finally see the foot. And she's trying to get him to put her hands
And
on his head.
she points at the badge on her hat because she's got the gun out.
Oh, is that what she does?
Yes, because she's like, put your hands up or halt or something. I can't remember exactly. And she has to point at the badge because he can't hear her.
Oh, so great. You know the reason why the film opens with "This is a true story." Do you know why the Coen brothers added that into the film?
No.
Because they recognised that the film escalated in such an absurd way that they thought no one's going to buy this story.
Yeah.
So if we tell them up front that it's true, people will be more receptive to the ridiculousness
There
of
was
the story.
actually another example of how I think they balance the absurd with the serious, because they say this is all true. We've had to change the names out of respect for the people that are still alive.
But out of respect for the dead,
we're gonna keep it as
exactly the same.
the same. So it's that lovely absurdity versus reality, but combined.
and all of the characters in Fargo, even though we've talked about them being somewhat caricatures, they're not. Actually, to be fair, they're stereotypes more than caricatures, aren't they? Jerry Lundegaard could be in any car dealership in North Dakota or in Minnesota, and the wife is so the wife, and their house is so ordinary and so typical. The son, and even Steve Buscemi with his idiocy, is they're not so beyond the bounds of possibility. So it's lovely, isn't it, when you've got really ordinary people doing extraordinary things or having extraordinary things happen to them. So.
Yeah, can I bounce off that? And to a previous point you made, Sarah, about an Irishman kind of coming in and depicting small town, rural, Americana. The main tonal difference I found between Three Billboards and Fargo was just that I think Fargo presents a world that feels real and lived in, and Three Billboards to me does not. It feels much more like an artificial construct to tell the story. Whereas Fargo, especially, I don't know if you guys know, I lived in Duluth, Minnesota for 4 years, which is the setting of season 1 of the Fargo TV show. And I saw Fargo ages ago, in the 90s, and then I watched it again after living in Duluth for ages. And it just shocked me. I mean, obviously the Coens are from Minnesota, but they get all the little details right. Norma's eating old Dutch potato chips, which is on store shelves everywhere. And you go to these houses and they have the little wooden knickknacks and all the, obviously the dialogue and the accent being a huge part of it. And, I had mates from Brainerd who sounded just like the people from Brainerd do.
Yeah.
And it does kind of edge towards stereotype, or sorry, not edge. It crosses the line straight into stereotype sometime with the and the guy being shot
kind
in
of
his
self-referential at least.
It is.
Yeah.
But my favorite thing is the father-in-law character being shot, and his final line is, "Oh, jeez."
It's adorable.
And it wasn't there's also the in that scene where they're at the buffet and she's getting all of that horrible looking food.
All that
and
Swedish meatballs.
And it's all fried because they're at Friars.
It's like chicken.
The thing that she skips over is like a sort of, it's got a, I can't remember the name.
Lutefisk.
Lutefisk, and it's like the some sort of dry.
It's preserved it's gelatinized fish that the Scandinavians used to eat, on the ocean voyages. And for some reason, the people in Minnesota think of it as like, oh, this is fancy.
Do you suppose she's not eating it because she's pregnant? Because I thought, gosh, not only are we spending a lot of time watching her spoon food into her plate, because the whole film she's eating throughout the whole film.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a lot about food.
She's in her car eating a burger. Norm brings her the
pies.
burger. He makes her the eggs.
You gotta have your breakfast.
That's
you gotta have your
right.
breakfast. She's
So
hungry
I'm watching
again.
all this food in this buffet, and I thought, oh, it's really cute. It's either an important detail or it's just a lovely character-driven detail that she goes,
Totally.
oh, no, I won't have that, but I'll have 2 helpings of this. And then they're munch, munch, munch.
And I love the bowl of jelly as well.
Yes.
Like she's prepped out her meal.
Yes.
Oh, it's just...
And hers is way bigger than Norm's.
Which is eating for 2.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
It's adorable.
But Jeremy, Lutefisk is disgusting.
Oh, just the idea of it, is it drenched in lime?
And lime, yeah, so it tastes really chemical and...
So by comparison then, to follow on from what you're saying, William, Fargo, situated realistically by people who know the environment and have constructed it so, compared with Three Billboards, which has a foreigner, Irish descent, English living, whatever he is. You're quite right. Coming over, interestingly, calling the film by the name of the place, just like Fargo is. But so how are we seeing it? Are we seeing it that these characters that he's written are also a little bit over the top? That there's... I mean, is it kind? Is it kind? Is he looking at it in a mocking way and going, I'm going to go over and take the piss out of middle America?
No.
I wouldn't say so.
No? Okay. Mm-hmm.
You do feel... I feel like there is quite a lot of empathy with every character in the movie. As we said before, even the normally despicable ones.
Even John Hawkes,
Yes,
the
yes.
horrible, abusive husband, has some nice moments.
Yeah.
There's a fantastic scene in the movie concerning their family unit, which is... Yeah, I found just fascinating and really cool.
He's such a cool actor.
Yeah.
Man, when he came into the film, I was just like, he played that one little tiny part.
Yeah.
And he just... There's something about John Hawkes that's just really, really fantastic.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, his teenage girlfriend, the movie, makes fun of her, but you still feel empathy with her, which is really cool.
I think just talking about the names of the films, you mentioned how much you loved the title. I think I do not like the title.
No, I don't
I think
either.
they should just call it Three Billboards because
That's
it's just
what everyone-
ridiculously long. And
Yeah.
I think...
And who's going to remember? Well, I guess people do, Ebbing, Missouri, but I wonder how many people are like, oh, let's go see that film, Three Billboards Outside of...
I called it 2 or 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Didn't I refer to it as 4 billboards on the point?
Funny.
The Mandarin translation in Taiwan is just called... It's a hard translation, but it's 2 characters, and it translates to, like, coincidence.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Coincidence.
Yeah.
Well, that's very appropriate.
Or like
for
accident, kind of.
Yes, but coincidence is different from
Like
accident.
EY, so it's something that happens that's outside of the ordinary.
Or outside of your control.
Yes.
Oh, that I would take.
Is this for Fargo or for...
For Three Billboards Outside.
Three Billboards. Well, if the film had been called that, then I would have been more open to that, because that's my biggest issue with the story, is that there are 2 very strong coincidences in the third act. I'm like,
I bet you it's a playwright's. Is he more... Would we consider McDormand more a playwright than a film... than a screenwriter?
I think he's a stronger director than he is a scriptwriter.
But I mean, he's got a... But his history is in
Yeah.
theatre, right? I'm just wondering, it feels more like a play
I mean,
title.
the whole
maybe.
thing, if you close your eyes, it could be a radio play.
Yeah.
That's true.
Now, okay, so that comes on to the dialogue, perhaps. I do object to all of the swearing. And when I saw the trailer, and it was hilarious, because I saw the trailer and they beeped out all of her words, and they bothered in the trailer to the opening scene of the trailer is her driving along in the car very, very slowly and shouting out at the woman, the newscaster, and it's all, you think you can beep, 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 and you can't even understand, but you certainly get a sense that this is going to be quite a sort of a, a potty, not a potty humour, but a crass language kind of film. And maybe it's my age, maybe it's my extraordinarily strong conservatism, no, not really, but as somebody who swears quite a lot in my own life, I don't know, I just kind of feel like, really?
I fully agree with you in concept. I don't have a huge issue with this film, but I do find that some films that try and pepper their movies with swearing. We actually talked briefly before this podcast about the film Bright, the David Ayer film, which is just, from my perspective, terrible. But that film has just got so much swearing in it. And I'm like, who is your audience? Like,
and is it necessary?
It's not necessary. I mean, there are films where swearing is used to great effect, and that it really, makes your characters. I just think, okay, I tell my students that swearing is shorthand.
Yes.
It's lazy speaking because you can't be bothered articulating how you really feel. And I think that if you use it in the right way to effect, swearing can be really thrilling. But yeah, if it's just peppered through, it's just kind of like, oh.
And I wonder how much of it was written for her. And McDormand can pull off that if she can pull off anything. But I wonder how much of it was a conscious decision to write her as hard a character as he possibly could. Hard, but a mother grieving her daughter who's actually got softness within her. And that again is part of the crafting of the character. And it's clever and it's well done. But really,
Yeah, I agree with you guys on that. Especially when you have stuff like the TV series BoJack Horseman on Netflix, where they famously have one F word per season, and it's used to demonstrate like a relationship breaking down. Like it's often the emotional apex of a season, compared to a lot of movies, especially ones aping Tarantino, where people was like F F F F. David Ayer films, for one.
Yeah.
Where it just, it loses the power that, words have. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just briefly, the TV series, you mentioned the TV series, I think that's it's an anomaly in that it's like, when I first heard about the Fargo TV series, I was like, what? How are they going to do this? And that has had 3 seasons now, and I believe that they're in talks about a 4th one. And that's been just as enjoyable as the film. Like it's taken the aspects of the film, done new stuff with it, feeling both like a homage and its own sort of beast.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that Fargo would have got a TV series?
I never would have thought.
That's so good. And just the anthology aspect of how they tie everything together and kind of incorporate the movie into this grander scheme of crime in the upper Midwest is so good.
I still hope that Three Billboards doesn't spawn a TV series, though.
No, I agree. I also hope that it doesn't win a Best Picture, but it quite likely could.
Yeah, or McDormand at least deserves Best Actress.
I think
What do you think else should get it? Not Shape of Water, so...
No, not Shape of Water. What else is there?
I haven't looked.
I'm not usually very good at going back to films that I've seen before, even real classics. So that's been quite a nice aspect of the podcast, is that I'm like, and then I always enjoy it. Like going back to Blade Runner, going back to this has been so fantastic.
Well, it's like I didn't really want to watch Fargo again last night because even though I love it, I've seen it so many times, and I was just feeling tired. But my flatmate was him and we got some takeaways, and I said, "Oh, I'm doing this film. Have you seen it?" He said, "Nah." So we put on Fargo. And watching it with someone who hadn't seen it was
that's
so
great.
enjoyable. And he was just like, at the end of it, he was like, that was such a good film.
Yeah,
and he's
that's
like,
great.
How long was that? An hour and a half?
Yeah,
he said,
man.
that's got more depth and weight to it than most 2.5-hour films.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the brevity of Fargo is just another fantastic thing.
And they're still putting in little chunks where you're like, there's a dialogue that doesn't really seem to have much relevance, and it still fits in.
Yeah.
But I should have said like that. It's quite perfect in a lot of ways. Like it's got everything. It's got cinematography. It's got fantastic score. It's got acting.
Music.
It's got dialogue. It's got
Fargo.
depth.
Yeah. The opening
It's got
scene
humour,
with
it's
the
got
whiteout and the bird kind of floating in and out of focus, and then all the fence posts coming by. Holy moly, Roger Deakins is a genius.
And he's potentially, he hasn't won an Academy Award yet, has he? But is he nominated this year for Blade Runner?
Blade Runner, yeah.
Hasn't he been nominated a million
This
times?
is like his 10th or 11th
Must
time,
be
I think.
gotta.
I think it's 18th.
What?
I think so.
Because he films everything.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoyed our podcast, then please share it with your film-loving friends. You can listen to Cinema in Context through SoundCloud or through Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook or subscribe to us on Twitter or YouTube, which are great places to let us know what you think of this episode or give us suggestions for future films to discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, and until then, ka kite anō.